has to be Cristiano Ronaldo.
Sixers, if they play Boston first round, Celtics are a first round exit.
Oh
They're
my
going
gosh, you are
bye.
insane.
And all 4 games that they lost in the ALCS were in Houston, the only place that they were cheating. Now,
The same way he's been playing, it doesn't matter. If Sam Darnold has that coaching staff in that playbook, he's a better player. We saw it in the last 5 weeks of the NFL regular season last year, and we're going to see it this entire season.
Hang on.
Wait,
Kawhi Leonard is just a tad better than LeBron James. After he
welcome
won the
back to
championship.
Go Chat. Welcome back to another episode. We are on episode number 7.
hey everybody, welcome back to Goat Chat. We're here for episode 14. We're going to start off with the Go of the Number, and we have a great episode for you today. We're going to have an interview with former Syracuse kicker Cole Murphy, so it's going to be an exciting one. But, you know, episode 14, Go of the Number 14. Matt Kane, who's your Go of the Number 14?
You're forgetting something. Sponsored by 1306 Sports.
How could I forget that?
Why don't
They're
you
my
tell us
favorite
about it?
over there.
Why don't you tell us about 1306 Sports quickly?
Well, 1306, I can't say enough good things about them. They're a great company. They let us put the podcast on there, so we're thankful for that. But they have a lot of great sports content. They have articles. They have other podcasts. So if you need more sports content, definitely go check them out. I'm sorry that I forgot them, but, you know, they're the best over there. So
I think they just hit 100 followers this past
That's
week,
right.
I'm pretty sure. So congrats to them.
And everyone go check out Tommy's 2 latest articles where he has 2 different articles with MLB draftees. So those are definitely must reads.
thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. All right, Matt Kane. So who do you have for the Go the number 14?
Go number 14. I'm gonna go with Bob Cousy. You know, I was contemplating this one to agree with Tommy, because I know Tommy's a big Pete Rose, but I'm gonna go Bob Cousy. You know, I just think that he's one of the best point guards to ever play for the Celtics, and that was a legendary team. It's a great franchise, one of the best, obviously, in the NBA. And you know, he played 12 years, actually 13. He came back after retirement, but 12 years with the Celtics. And he led 8-time assist champ, 12-time All-NBA, 13 All-Star. He's a Hall of Famer, 6-time NBA champ. That's all the stats I have about him.
Yeah, that's a great pick. So, Mike, who do you have?
It's 100% Pete Rose. I mean, the MLB leader in hits. I mean, Pete Rose is we're never going to see anything like him. He's 17-time All-Star, 3 times World Series winner, 2-time Gold Glover. He was an MVP. I mean, this guy, he was insane. Batted 300 his whole career. What more can you ask for him?
Yeah, that's a great pick as well, Mike. Connor, who do you have?
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Mike here and go Pete Rose. He threw out a lot of the numbers. I mean, I also have that he was a career .303 batting hitter, and he has a 79.7 win above replacement. So, I mean, all those numbers collectively just make him the best baseball player in a very long time. And I'm just going to use this for one more statement that Pete Rose should undoubtedly be in the Hall of Fame, and there is no exceptions to that. Tommy, who's your go to the 14?
Well, I agree with you guys 100%. It's got to be Pete Rose. I mean, he's one of the most electrifying players that anyone has ever seen. Baseball's all-time hits leader. He won 2 World Series. And Mike gave some of the stats, obviously. 17-time All-Star, won the Rookie of the Year, 3-time batting champion. He just did everything on the diamond. They called him Charlie Hustle. He gave it all he had when he played. He was also a player manager. Just an outstanding baseball mind. I love listening to him when he's on Fox because, you know, he has some great insight. And, you know, he just did anything he could to help his team. I believe he's second all time in reaching on catcher's interference behind Jacoby Ellsbury. But, you know, he was just an incredible player. And, you know, he didn't hit too many home runs in his career, only 160, but he still, you know, the numbers are absolutely incredible. I mean, I don't think anybody's ever going to break that record because nobody's consistent like that today. You know, it's either strikeout or home run with a lot of guys. So, yeah, so Pete Rose, an incredible player, and he's obvious. It was an obvious choice for my go, the number 14.
One other person
You know what I like about Pete Rose? He's played 24 years in the MLB. I mean, that's like remarkable in itself. He retired at the age of 45. I don't know how you do that, especially like now in this day of age. I think of like as you get into your 40s, you start to retire. I mean, I'm not sure 100% about the MLB, but that's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
I feel like what separates Pete Rose from Bob Cousy is just Bob Cousy play on the Celtics teams with Bill Russell, and his team was just so outstanding. Talking about like Pete Rose was the player manager, Bill Russell was a player coach. Bob Cousy was not able to do that. It was Bill Russell who was the best player on that team, while Pete Rose was the best player on his Reds team. So I think that's what separates Pete Rose from Bob Cousy.
One other person who I do want to mention who rocked the number 14. I'm going to NASCAR here. It's Tony Stewart. He was a very good NASCAR driver. He had 3 championships. He did win 2 of them with the number 20 car, but he is most notably known for the number 14 car, and he did have a really, really good NASCAR career there. And number 14 is now owned by him. He is now a NASCAR owner. So he's definitely an honorary mention there for the number 14 for the sport of NASCAR.
Yeah, he was a really good racer, one of the best. He also appeared in Last Man Standing. I actually just watched that episode a little back, so I that's just in my head now. And obviously, yeah, right now he's got Stewart Haas Racing right now for a team. So yeah, he's definitely a great race car driver. Any other notable shout outs do you want to make, Connor? I know you want to.
Do I dare mention Sam Darnold?
I think you want to.
No, but you know what? If Goat Chat's around in 10 years, then maybe Sam Darnold will be on this list.
I mean, the only way Sam Darnold is going to be on this list is if he leaves the Jets, because he's not succeeding with the Jets. Let's be honest.
I'm looking into this.
Time will just tell. Maybe episode 1014, we will talk about that. So subscribe now to get into the action and be there for every episode that we have. Any final thoughts before we head into a great interview with Cole Murphy?
Everyone should get excited.
Woo!
Tommy, do you have any enthusiasm for us?
I'm always enthusiastic. I can't wait to talk to Cole Murphy. I mean, he had some good years with Syracuse. He had some big wins, beat Clemson, number 2 team in the nation at the time. So I'm sure he has a lot of good insight. Looking forward to talking to him.
Awesome. We will be back with our special guest coming up next. Welcome back to Go Chat. We are finally here with the former Syracuse kicker, Cole Murphy. Cole, how are you doing today?
Doing great, guys. How are you?
Good.
Doing awesome. Thanks for being on the show. So,
Here.
awesome. So, our first question for you, obviously you're a kicker. So, other than football, what other sports did you play growing up?
So growing up, I primarily was a soccer player. I was a goalkeeper for at least 10 years. I mean, I started playing soccer when I was about 4 or 5 and didn't stop until I finished high school. And then I experimented a little bit. I played some volleyball in high school. And then I also played a little bit of flag football, tackle football. Then I tried experimenting a little bit with rugby and other things like that, but mainly football and soccer.
Nice.
Awesome.
I see that you were a walk-on at Syracuse. So can you just kind of take us through like what that kind of process was and that adjustment to the team being a walk-on?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so I don't know how informed you guys are with the whole recruiting process, but as you know, there's scholarship players, then there's walk-on players. There's types of walk-ons. There's a preferred walk-on, and then there's a normal walk-on. A preferred walk-on is usually recruited by staff. They're asked, hey, we want you to come to the team. We just don't have a scholarship yet for you, or you need to earn one, or something like that. A typical walk-on is a normal student who applies in, gets in as a normal student, then approaches the team once they've got in as a normal student, and from there they find their way onto the team, whether they come in during spring ball or after the 105 reports over the summer. So I was a preferred walk-on. So I was still recruited. I was still, I shouldn't say a high-level candidate for the team, but I was somebody that they wanted to bring onto the team. So that was kind of an interesting thing. I was lumped in with all the scholarship guys, but at the same time, I'm having to pay my way through all the stuff. So, Syracuse isn't a cheap school. So it was an interesting way to kind of find my way there. Overall, I enjoyed it. I really loved it. I mean, I'm kind of paying for it now, but I mean, I absolutely loved it.
Mhm.
So you mentioned some of the opponents that you played against, like Clemson and Florida State. Obviously, the ACC is a great conference. What was it like to have such good competition and be in some real high leverage games throughout your college career?
It was really an exciting thing. I mean, in high school, I never expected to play against all these teams. Florida State, Clemson, Louisville, even non-conference teams when we played LSU, or even smaller teams. Even if we were going against from Michigan or Wake Forest, or any team. In my wildest dreams, really something hit me out of high school. And I mean, when you're in it, it's an absolutely amazing feeling. You're out there, and for Clemson as an example, if you're out there on the field and they're all screaming all at the exact time, I've never been you that was so. If I'm less than 2 feet away from a teammate, I'd have to be screaming at the top of my lungs just to even for me to get their attention. Quite honestly, it's something that I don't know if I'll. Hopefully, I will. I'm an NFL free agent, so hopefully I'll get in there soon. But even then, I can't expect to get those crazy loud fans there all the time.
Yes, I mean, that was a great answer. So, well, at least my next question is, what was your favorite game or experience with a fan that you had as a member of the Syracuse Orange football team?
Favorite game? I mean, it's got to be hands down when we beat Clemson at home. That was one of the most incredible experiences of my life. Both my parents were there, and my uncle Rick, who I hadn't seen for about a year there. So in addition to all the crazy stuff where we won the game, and it was one of the biggest hits, at least in the last few years, to have my family there. And funny enough, my brother called me once and he said, "Hey, I'm going to come to a game. Mom and Dad want me to come to Clemson. Is that worth coming to?" And I said, "Yeah, it absolutely is." And he was like, "Are you sure? I'm close." And I was like, "No, like, don't worry about it." And for him to full speed just jump onto me was one of the coolest things ever after beating, the number 2 ranked team in the country. It's undescribable. It really is.
Yeah, that was a nice backstory behind, well, at least for some Syracuse fans, a really memorable moment. So, Matt, you got another question for him?
Yeah. So you talked about obviously being an NFL free agent now, but you were signed by the Cardinals in the March of 2019. Obviously, that's a huge accomplishment for you and for a lot of kids around the world that want to play in the NFL. So what did it feel like ultimately being in the NFL on the big stage?
Well, honestly, it was a validation of my effort and the amount of time that I put into my craft. I mean, I started kicking when I was 13 years old, and like I said before, I never would have envisioned that I could have gotten to this spot. I mean, only 1% of high school athletes make it to D1, and it's usually 1 to 3% of those guys go on. And say that I got that contract was really something special. And it validated the amount of time and effort that I put in North LA. I drive down to Carlsbad, which for you guys in the Northeast don't know, it's probably about 2 hours roughly. I go down 2-3 times a week and train down here at Carlsbad with John Carney, who's old NFL vet. He played 23 seasons in the NFL. And, when I come down here and I kick really well and he tells me you're ready, it's a really nice compliment. But at the same time, there's nothing to compare it to. Whereas when you go you go and you compete with these guys.
So before signing with the Cardinals, you did play in the AAF with the San Diego Fleet. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
So Dave Fuller, who was one of our personnel guys at Syracuse, when he finished over at Syracuse, he signed with the AAF. He gave me a call, and I think this was in September of 2018. So it was about 8 months after I finished college. And he called and he had asked if I had signed with any teams. And I said no, because I had still been looking around. I was a free agent, wasn't really sure what I was trying to do. I had actually just started working with Carney, and I was feeling good. I wasn't feeling NFL ready. Called and said, "Hey, we're doing this new startup league. We're trying to figure out what the deal is with it. We're trying to acquire as many players as we can. We're still figuring out salaries and contracts and all that stuff. But would you be interested in playing? Get in there, get some film. Then I'd absolutely have signed the contract. We started picking everything out in December. We had some training camps. January we rolled around. We went into training camp full time where we were in San Antonio, Texas. We were there for about a month, and we were just getting used to training, getting used to each other, snap, hold, kick, and all that stuff. And I got used to working with my long snapper Ryan DeSalvo and our punter Sam Hill. Unfortunately, Sam, because he's an Australian national, when he was with the Redskins, he thought that they had re-upped his visa, and they hadn't. And so they had to send him back to Australia for about a month. So they brought in another punter named Brian Winslow. And so with Ryan, we were there for about a month. And unfortunately, I got released. I think it was 3 days before our first game, which, you know what, it really sucked. And it was the first team I was with. And, at first, I was kind of pondering whether or not it was coaching. But right after that, about 2 months after, was when I signed my Arizona Cardinals contract. So it kind of rejuvenated my love and desire for kicking. So overall, it was a harsh experience because it was my first jump into pro ball, but at the same time, it kind of helped me get to my spot where I got my NFL contract. So overall, I'm really thankful for the experience.
I think our connection is a little bit better now. So if you don't mind, I just want to re-ask one question. We didn't hear a lot of you very well before. So, what was it like playing in the Dome and just that entire experience?
The Dome was amazing, man. I mean, it's an indoor facility, which a lot of stadiums aren't. A lot of them are, they're open bowls. So because you're not allowed to have as many people in the Dome, people always assume that it's gonna be quiet. But because it's indoor, everything reverberates and it gets a lot louder. And so, we can have 45,000 people in the Dome, but it sounds like 90 because everything's reverberating off the walls and everything's bouncing everywhere. So it actually has the energy of a massive stadium, and I absolutely love it. It was something that I really got accustomed to. And when we were actually ever in a game and we were actually in it and really close, it was amazing how loud it got. I mean, 45,000 people in the Dome was the same thing as 85,000 at Clemson when they were screaming at the same volume. It's one of those stadiums that I'm never going to forget playing there. I loved playing in there because, one, the noise, two, it actually always got hot in there, which was kind of weird because Carey Dome is named after Carey air conditioners, but they don't have air conditioning. So a little goofy, right?
Yeah,
but,
we were talking about that earlier, actually.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, right? I think now with the new renovations, I think they're actually putting in air conditioning. So they've solved that issue. But it was kind of funny because you'd walk in and it would be 55, 60 degrees in there. And you're like, okay, it's freezing cold. But by the time you got into halftime or 3/4 into the game, it would be 90 degrees in there. And you're like, it's really hot. And so a lot of teams wouldn't expect that unless they've played there before. So it was kind of a cool factor to have the noise, the heat, and in addition, as a kicker, the big perk is that there's no wind. So for us, it's the same thing as playing in an indoor arena where when you hit a ball, it's a pure ball no matter what. If it goes left, it's because you hit it left. If it goes right, it's because you hit it right. And if you make it, it's because you actually hit a ball that went through the uprights. There's no guesswork. There's no adjusting. And so when you're at home, it's really nice. The only disadvantage is when you go to another stadium and you're playing in, Pittsburgh or UConn or Boston College, and you're not used to playing in this crazy cold weather with the wind and the snow and the rain and all that stuff. Makes it a challenge, but that's the perk of playing indoors for almost the whole game. It makes things so much easier.
Well, you did mention obviously how kicking indoors was a little bit easier for you because it was like you said, it was a pure ball. But really, when I think about kickers, I think about like the last second kicks. Like that's a big thing for me. So what's going through your mind when you're stepping onto the field for a game-winning or a game-tying field goal, and how do you handle all that pressure?
Yeah, so game winner, the biggest thing is not score, and you're thinking about we're still tied and we're going into overtime, or you're thinking about the weather, you're thinking about the rain, you're thinking about the wind, you're thinking about any of that kind of stuff. You're not focusing on what you're actually doing, which is just kicking the ball. So that's really my biggest thing. is when I go out there, I'm just focusing in on when I get to my spot. I'm doing everything exactly the same way I do it in practice. I'm doing it the same way I do it in every single PAT, every single field goal, every single kickoff. Everything is exactly the same. So if I'm focusing on all this other stuff that's going on, you're not dialed in. So for me, most of the part, I kind of ignore the score most of the game. I more keep in track with, offense, whether they're on the field, or defense, whether they're on the field, or what down it is, or what yard line we're at, and all that stuff, so that I know exactly when I need to be called out there, and I can go out there and hit a field goal. So game winners and all that kind of stuff, if you're thinking about it being a game winner, you've already lost in terms of the way that I perceive it.
Great.
For sure. And, I'm sorry, Connor.
Go ahead, Tommy.
Okay, you were talking about staying dialed in, and you were able to do that from 2014 to 2016. You held a streak for 60 consecutive extra points made in a row. Tell me how you stay locked in for such a long period of time like that.
Well, for us, overall, a PAT is just a 20-yard field goal. So for us, it's not really that much of a difficult kick. Most of the time when you miss a PAT, it's usually because timing is off, or because I think actually the first PAT I missed, I want to say it was because our timing was off. I think we were getting ready with a new snapper. We had just gotten Matt Keller in there, I think, and we were just trying to get used to all of us together. So for the most part, a PAT isn't really something you really need to be too dialed in for. As long as you hit it even relatively clean, it should go in. I think even in 2015, I think I hit one PAT at NC State that just scraped over the bar, but was still good. So for the most part, I think it's just consistently doing the same thing over and over. Even if you miss-hit it a little bit, even if things are not quite there, a PAT should still go in, at least in terms of what I think 95% of the time. I think if you miss one or two, it's not that big a deal. But when you start missing multiple in a game or multiple in a season, that's when it starts to kind of become an issue.
For sure.
So what future goals do you have for yourself? Obviously, you talked about being an NFL free agent. Are you just going to push your hardest to get to the NFL? Yeah,
absolutely. So right now, just like I was telling you guys, I've been in Carlsbad training with John Carney for the last 2.5, 3 years. John's kind of my biggest advocate. I love that guy. And right now, I'm just focused in on making sure I can try to at least get in an opportunity to play in an NFL game. If I get into the preseason and I've got some sort of field goals or some sort of kickoffs or at least some game film, then way more likely that I'll be able to get another opportunity if it doesn't happen with that team. So that's kind of the trick when you're in the NFL. You want to get as many clips as you can in the preseason if you're trying to get in. So for me, that's really my goal, whether I stick with the team or whether I get let go. As long as I try to play in a preseason game or 2 or 3, that's my biggest goal for now. Playing wise, once I'm done, my biggest thing that I'm doing right now is as long as I have a chance once a year, I'm able to keep going. So if I get a phone call from, let's say it's Indianapolis, and they say, hey, we want you to fly in for a workout, my year starts up again. So every time I get a new opportunity, whether it's going to a combine, whether it's getting in for a workout, whether it's getting a phone call for an Arena League team or a Canadian League team or something like that, then my year starts back up again. And so that's kind of my thing. When it gets to a year and I haven't had anything, then I know it's time to kind of let it go. And in terms of afterwards, I plan on being a coach. I want to try to go into either college or pro ball and be a special teams coach, work with kickers, work with punters. That's something I think I'm really good at. That's kind of how I'm making my living right now. I'm working with a lot of kickers and punters that are in high school or in college. As of right now, I think I'm working with about 25 kids. And so hopefully I'll be able to send them off to a good school. So just so that in case when I'm done playing, I've already got a resume under my belt, I can say, hey, I've worked with these kids. I've gotten these kids to college. I've gotten them to, I've got one kid who right now has got 4 offers. He's got Yale and 3 military academies. I've got one kid who's probably going to go to Washington. I've got another kid who's going to Redlands, which is a D3. But these are some of my older kids. I've got, all the kids all the way down to like 7th grade. So that's kind of my goal after. I want to go work with specialists after I'm done playing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Do you think your time working with those kids and helping them adapt to the game, is that making you a better kicker overall?
I think so. I think it's making me understand the game a lot more. It's also making me understand that there's not one way to kick. I mean, if you go and you look at all 32 NFL kickers, there's 32 different ways that they kick, and they all work for them. When I was growing up, I was always taught there's one way to do it, and you have to stick to that way. And if you don't, you're going to miss left and miss right. It's going to be hectic. But after watching all of these kids, I've seen, okay, well, this kid kicks with his hips in a certain position. This kid kicks looking at the ball the entire time. This kid picks his eyes up. This kid likes to stay back at the spot. There's all these different little things that kids like to do. And for me, it's more of a learning experience that I can understand, okay, maybe if I try this and it doesn't work the first couple of times, I can still work my way into getting into it. So yeah, it helps me a lot with understanding my own craft, and it helps me understand that, not every kid's the same, not every kicker's the same, and you can't treat them all the same way. You have to, in terms of technique wise, obviously you got to be nice to every kid, but you don't want to try to force them into the same niche or the same style, because for some kids it just doesn't work.
All right. Great answer, Matt. Do you have a question? I saw you were about to say something.
I was going to ask if you could go over a part that we already asked about the Cardinals, obviously accomplishing that dream. You were kind of in and out during that question, so if you kind of reiterate your answer for us.
Sure. Yeah. It was really validating just to know that I could get to that level. When I was in high school, I never thought I was going to be able to play pro ball. And percent-wise, I mean, the chances of a high school kid going and playing pro ball is so incredibly small. I think 1% of kids go on and play D1 football out of high school, and then another 1 to 3% usually play pro ball out of college. So to be 1% of 1%, in my opinion, is a really big validation. And for me to know that I have the ability to go and do something like that, for me, it's really encouraging. And we kind of touched about. I thought, am I good enough? I don't know what I'm going to be able to do if I can't make it in this second-rate league. How am I going to make it up to the NFL? And within a matter of 2 months, I went from getting cut by the AAF to being signed by Arizona.
Okay, great answer. So unfortunately, you were released by the Cardinals at the beginning of May. So what can you take from that experience moving forward, and how can you apply it to help you getting back into the NFL?
Well, the biggest thing is that even though I got released and, I really enjoyed my time there, it made me understand what needs to be done in order to be at that level. I always knew, you got to be a really good kicker. You got to be able to make X percent of your balls, or you got to be under a certain off time or all that stuff. But I didn't quite understand the workout regimens. I didn't understand the nutritional stuff. And granted, I knew some of it from college, but not to the extent that they showed me in Arizona. And I really enjoyed my time there. I mean, I got to meet people that I never thought I was going to be able to meet. I mean, Chandler Jones, the first day I walked in there, we were walking out on the field, and Chandler Jones looks at me and he goes, "Hey, Syracuse." And I was like, "Oh my God, yeah, you're Chandler Jones." Or guys like Larry Fitzgerald. I would sit down and I'd be eating lunch, and because we're supposed to be going, we do our recovery stuff while other people are on the field. And so we're there a little bit longer than other people are. And so went and got my lunch, and Larry Fitzgerald comes in and sits down right across from me. And he's like, "Hey, you've been here for a week and I haven't come over and introduced myself." And so we ended up sitting greatest receivers of all time right in front of me. And he's just a normal guy. So that was a really, really a cool thing. And I loved my experience at Arizona, and it, more than anything, I consider it a teaching experience. It really showed me what I need to do to get back into that level. And actually, even right now, I feel like I'm at the level where I'm kicking really well. I'm in great shape. My condition's great. I'm able to lift really well. And I feel like I'm ready to go. But unfortunately, it's not up to me yet. When I get my opportunity, when I get my workouts, when I get my, the eyes on me, I just got to be able to show that I can do it. And based on doing what I did in Arizona, I know I can do it.
Yeah, definitely. Those were some pretty cool stories that you told us, how, meeting Larry Fitzgerald and Chandler Jones. But, obviously going off that, growing up, obviously this is a sports show. We debate about all different kinds of sports. So what was your sports fandom like growing up? Like, who were some of your favorite teams, some of your favorite players? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So my dad's side of the family is from Nebraska, so we're big Cornhusker fans. And actually, when I got recruited to Syracuse by Chris Gould, who now's at the Denver Broncos, I didn't even know where Syracuse was. I had no idea. And he called me as I was warming up for a soccer game, and I sent him to voicemail because I was like, all right, I got to warm up. I got to get ready to go. And I listened to the voicemail, and I called my dad afterwards. And I'm like, hey, Dad, this coach from Syracuse called me. I don't know where that is. I don't know what conference they're in. You know, do you know anything about them? And my dad jumped out of his seat and he goes, oh my God, Syracuse, they're giant killers. Because I think it was in 1974 or 78. They beat Nebraska when they were ranked number 1. And my dad was like, oh my gosh, Syracuse that's the team you have to go to. He said, we got to get you on board there. And right after that, when I took my visit, and then I committed on the spot. But yeah, so mainly I was a big Nebraska fan. I forgot the question for a second. But yeah, we were big Nebraska fans. LA wise, we were going more for UCLA than USC. I know that's a big thing between people in LA. Probably not so much for you guys in North. But if I could compare it, it's kind of a similar thing to like Giants versus Jets, or you guys are probably Bills fans when I think about it. Yeah, I don't know. It's UCLA are probably my two big ones.
Well, that's interesting to hear. Well, at least for me. Do you guys have any other questions?
I have a question we could finish off on. It's what advice do you have
Sure.
kids around the world that have big dreams like you? So like obviously what advice would you have for like the kids that you're working with that want to be a kicker and like you and ultimately make it to the NFL?
I think the biggest thing they need to do is they need to understand the risk. You know, like I was saying, it's 1% of 1% of guys that make it into the NFL. I never expected to make it into the NFL. I actually, when I was in high school, I thought I was going to be a pro soccer player. I had done really well, and I figured that soccer was my main thing. And I tried football just because I thought it was fun. My dad was a huge fan. Nebraska football is huge for us, so I wanted to at least try it. And ended up working out really well for me. But kids need to understand that there's only a certain number of guys that are going to be able to make it. Having said that, you need to take it one step at a time. If you're looking 35 steps down the road at the NFL and you're a 14-year-old kid and you can only make a 30-yard field goal, you got a lot of work to get from A to Z. So I always tell them, look, instead of focusing on the NFL or getting a scholarship or going to play D1 or D2 or playing somewhere close to you or going to a private school or a public school, whatever it is, focus in on, can I make everything 35 and in? Once you can do that, can I make everything 38 and in? Then 40 and in, then 42 and in.
Welcome back to Go Chat. We just had a great interview there with Cole Murphy. We had some good questions. He had some great answers, some great stories to tell us. So we're just going to go a little bit around and, share what we thought that was really interesting from this interview. So I'll start with you, Connor. What was one of your favorite moments from this interview?
I mean, unfortunately, we had some of those technical difficulties there, but I mean, he's a great guy, and some of his answers are great. I personally loved his stories from when he was in Arizona there. I mean, just getting the chance to just eat lunch with Larry Fitzgerald, I think that's any sports guy's dream. Just sit across the table from Larry Fitzgerald, and he just walks up to you and just says, "Hey." We're meeting Chandler Jones on the first. It's just he's a great guy, and he's got those incredible stories. I truly wish him the best of the luck.
I definitely have to agree with you. I mean, Larry Fitzgerald comes over to him, just some random kicker the Cardinals picked up, saying, "Hey, I haven't talked to you." That's something a true leader does. That's something a true leader thrives to be in my eyes. So big props to Larry Fitzgerald, I guess. So Tommy, tell us another one of your favorite moments from this interview.
Yeah, well, I just think his whole story is great. I mean, he you know, his family was Nebraska fans. He was playing soccer. He gets a call. They want him to come to Syracuse. And obviously, he talked about it. Syracuse had that big win over Nebraska. So he decided to look at him, didn't know much about the school. Then he comes to the school in a time where they're kind of struggling as a program. And he comes in and has an incredible win against Clemson, number 2 team in the nation. And just the stories that he told about that. I mean, just think about how amazing that would be to, you're in your 20s and you're right in there in a big game. You beat one of the best teams in the country. It's got to be unbelievable. So I really enjoyed hearing that.
Yeah, I think his whole story is absolutely, honestly, it's pretty interesting. In my opinion, it's pretty, I just thought it was interesting. Okay. Well, Matt, do you have another moment that you really enjoyed from this interview?
Yeah, to go off Tommy, what he said. You know, the whole crowd. You just beat Clemson. The whole crowd's shaking. Did they storm the field that game, or was it Virginia Tech? I know they stormed the field.
Yeah,
No,
they
no.
did for both of them.
Yeah, they stormed the field. I think he said like his brother was like ran
Yeah.
into like his arms, so that was really cool.
Yeah, that was definitely a cool part to have his family at that game, and they were kind of like, oh, is Clemson gonna be a good game? Because when you think about it, it's number 2 Clemson going up against unranked Syracuse. Syracuse hasn't had a big win, and well, the year before they did, and then before that, really no big wins. But yeah, I just thought his whole story was cool. I think it's cool that he's working with kids too, kickers like are younger than us, obviously in high school. 7th grade, I think he said, was the lowest that he goes. I think that's cool. Kind of just working on his craft and what he wants to do in the future, how he wants to coach and just teach and ultimately make kids better at the craft that they really want. And I think that working with the kids is just amazing. And obviously the Cardinals story with a Syracuse great like Chandler Jones says, "Hey, Syracuse," that's just cool.
Yeah, some other great moments, and personally, probably my favorite moment, like what Connor said, was when Larry Fitzgerald just comes up and sits across from him. But I also found what he said about kicking, game-winning or game-tying field goals was really interesting. How he doesn't even pay attention to the score throughout the game. He just pays attention to who has the ball, whether his team are on offense or defense. And for me, I've participated in athletics throughout high school and now playing club sports in college. If that's me in like a high pressure situation, I'm like thinking about it, like you just got to take a deep breath, get through. It's like you understand the moment, but he just completely says, screw it, just goes out there and does it normally. So, and he just trusts in his ability to compete. So I thought that was really interesting. Anything else you guys want to share about this interview?
I mean, obviously going off that, there's kickers like Cody Parkey who missed the double doink wild card game against the Eagles, and then he got released just because of it, even though he was actually a pretty decent kicker for them throughout the season. Then there's kickers like Blair Walsh who also missed that playoff against the Seahawks to win the game. I'm pretty sure, really left, but and then there's people like Mason Crosby who hits a clutch game winner. So I think that obviously what he said was right, that if you think that this is a game winner, you're gonna miss it automatically. Just I think that was cool what he said, and giving us a perspective of kicker, because we obviously don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, none of us have ever kicked.
I've never kicked. I don't even know how you make the old PAT. I don't think any of us can make it. But anyways, well, thanks for another great episode of Go Chat. Thanks for the continued support on Instagram, on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, all that stuff. I'll obviously follow us on all our socials, our personal socials as well. Go follow Cole Murphy too. His Instagram will be in this video as well. And we wish the best for him, and we'll see you next time on Go Chat.